For Monday, April 17th, 2023, will please come to order. Good evening. Those of you who are in the council chambers with us, welcome. If you would, please take a moment and check your cell phones to make sure that you have placed them on vibrate or silent. And for those of you who are participating remotely, we welcome you as well. Once again, we are providing remote access to the public for this meeting. And to that end, members of the public are asked to place their microphone on mute during the meeting, with the exception of any public hearing. At the appropriate point in the public hearing, I will invite the public to unmute their microphone for purposes of making such comments as they wish to make, one person at a time. And all persons wishing to make comments will be asked to first state their name and address for the record. After completing the comment, members of the public will once again be asked to place their microphone on mute, and we thank all of you for your cooperation this evening. At this time, if you would, please join us in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Hazen? Here. Mr. Belovich?
Here.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Here.
Mr. Bednicki?
Here.
Mr. Emmons?
Here.
Mrs. DeMade?
Here.
Mr. Compton?
Here.
Mrs. Volker?
Here.
Mr. Hixenbaugh?
Here. Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of March 20th, 2023. Are there any additions or corrections? Then hearing none, the minutes stand approved as received from the clerk's office. Petitions, communications, remonstrance, and memorial.
Yes, Mr. President, we have appeal number 2023-07 to the Common Council. This is a use variance to allow 5 temporary sales trailers through October 2023 at 4325 Grape Road. This is signed by Martin Walsh, Vice President, Facilities Development, Sonic Automotive. Appeal number 2003-08 to the Common Council, City of Mishawaka, petition for use development variance at 2014 East McKinley Avenue. This is to allow automobile repair in I-1 district, property east on 2014 East McKinley. Petition number 2023-05 to the honorable members of the Common Council, City of Mishawaka, Indiana. This is annexation and zoning ordinance to establish zoning as C1 General Commercial District, west of 5996 State Road 23. This is signed by Todd Veldman. Petition number 2003-06 to the honorable members of the Common Council. This is a petition for rezoning to rezone from C1 General Commercial to R3 Multifamily Residential, 2406 Schumacher Drive, and property adjacent vacant property. This is signed by Seth Freed. Petition number 2023-07 to the honorable members of the Common Council. This is an annexation and rezone portions of I-1 Light Industrial, property east of 2014 East McKinley. This is signed by Nate Zolman. Petition number 2023-08 to the honorable members of the Common Council to rezone from C1 General Commercial to R1 Single Family Residential, 2009 West 6th Street, and this is signed by Jessica Booker.
Thank you. This evening, we have no report of any special committee, nor any ordinances on first reading, so we'll move into resolutions.
Resolution R 2023-06, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, approving a report of compliance with statement of benefits for certain property owners. Would you like me to read the abatements?
The list of the recipients, yes, please.
Wellness Pet, formerly Well Pet LLC, High Speed Packaging Line, 2015. Lippert Components Manufacturing, Inc., building expansion and new racking logistics distribution equipment. Wellness Pet, formerly Well Pet LLC, building expansion, 2021. Wellness Pet, formerly Well Pet LLC, new production line including dryers, odor control equipment, and conveyance systems, 2021. Barak Group LLC, Steelhead Apartments, former Mishawaka Inn. Front Street LLC, the Avalon Mixed Use Building. Helios Hydraulics Americas LLC, building expansion. Helios Hydraulics Americas LLC, new manufacturing equipment.
Thank you. With that, we'll move into the public hearing on proposed resolution 2023-06. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come forward. Good evening, Mr. Spear.
Good evening, President, members of the council. I'm Derek Spear, City Planner. Office is located here at City Hall. Property owners who have applied for and have been granted a tax abatement for either real property or personal property must file a report with this council and the county auditor reporting the extent of compliance with the goals set forth in their statement of benefits that they submitted when they received their abatement. There are currently 6 projects with 9 active tax abatements. All of them require reporting for this year. All property owners have responded to our request to complete the statement of benefits forms. Since the prior reporting period for the calendar year 2022, 3 of the previously approved tax abatements have expired and therefore no longer require annual reports. The CF1s for both real estate and personal property are due to the county auditor's office no later than May 15th of each year. Staff has reviewed all the information submitted by all the companies and have summarized it as the following. The first one was WellPet. WellPet received a personal property tax abatement back in 2015 for equipment with a high-speed packaging line. Installation for this equipment began in 2016 and is in operation. The net values upon completion of the project were estimated at $17.3 million on the SB1 when it was filed. The actual net values upon completion of the project was $25.6 million, which exceeded their estimated values by $8.2 million. Total employment at the time was projected on the SB1. It has increased beyond what was projected. When it was filed, the existing employment was 115 with 4 jobs to be added. Total employment was reported at 121. Payroll was listed at over $7 million, which is 80% higher than the $4 million when the SB1 was approved. The next one is for Lippert Components. They received both real and personal property tax abatement in 2017 for renovating and improving, adding equipment at the former AM General facility on Burkett. The proposed real estate improvements included in this request were estimated at $7.4 million. All of these have been complete. It included a renovation of the existing building and then also some other site improvements. Actual real estate investment for the CF1 is $13.3 million. Personal property improvements in this abatement request were originally estimated at $1.6 million. They've all been purchased and installed. The actual personal property investment for the CF1 is nearly $10 million. Since the abatement was approved for 10 years for both personal and real property, reporting is required through 2028. When the abatement was filed, the total existing employment was listed at 247 with an additional 200 jobs to be added. At present, there are 406 employees, which is a substantial increase from the 21 employees in 2017 and 14 higher than the 392 employees reported last year. The company is continuing to explore opportunities to expand the headcount at this facility, including second shift operations and increasing the number of the call center employees. Total payroll was listed at nearly $22 million, which is more than the $10 million listed on the SB1 and an increase from the $20.5 million reported last year. The next one is for WellPet. They received an abatement in 2021. This was for real and personal property abatement for a new dryer building and manufacturing equipment. Construction on the proposed real estate improvements, which were estimated at $14.7 million, began in September of 2021. The improvements were to include an 8,100 square foot new dryer building, receiving building improvements, a new electrical system, a meat room expansion, and warehouse modifications. After the preliminary engineering and design were completed, a decision was made to put a majority of the building construction on hold. To date, actual real estate investment is listed at $410,000 in the CF1, which includes 2 small building additions to house the odor abatement equipment and the meat room expansion. A majority of the personal property improvements including this abatement request were estimated at $27.9 million. They're also on hold with the exception of the new odor mitigation system, coders, conveyance systems, and plant-in bins. The odor mitigation system and other improvements were purchased, installed, and became operational in mid-March of this year. Actual personal property investment to date is about $5.7 million. When the abatement was filed, employment was listed at 125, with 5 jobs to be added. The current employment level was 121, which is a slight decrease from the 125 last year, and less than the total 130 as projected. I did look at the company's website. There are currently 19 open positions that the company is actively recruiting. So if all those positions are filled, there would be 140 positions, which is higher than the 130 that they stated on their SB1. So although current employment level has slightly declined, the total payroll has increased to $7 million, which is 15% higher than the $6.1 million listed on the SB1. The next abatement is for Barak Group LLC. This is for the Steelhead Apartments. This was approved by the council last September, and it was for the proposed renovation and conversion of the former Mishawaka Inn into a 47 to 60 unit multifamily residential apartment building. A second phase was anticipated to include a new building with an additional 46 to 50 units. The correspondence that was attached to the packet said that the owner began the interior demolition last December, but the project was put on hold this January, and that was due to unanticipated significant cost overruns that may not allow the project to be profitable. At this time, the developer is looking at alternatives to allow the successful redevelopment of the property. So given that the project did commence, though, and is anticipated to continue after reevaluation, the completion of improvements and the employment and salaries cannot be evaluated for this year. The next one is for Front Street LLC. This is called the Avalon. It's a mixed-use building just to the northwest here of City Hall. This was approved in October last year. It included apartments, first-floor retail space. The construction began last November, and it's currently ongoing. And per the CF1 that was submitted, it's anticipated to be complete by November of this year. And the final one is for Helios Hydraulic Americas LLC. This is for both a real and personal property abatement approved in October of last year. This was for building expansion, installation of new manufacturing equipment. Last year, Helios Technologies acquired Damon Products. They manufacture hydraulic manifolds at their facility on North Home Street. The real property improvements include a $4.8 million building addition, expanded parking areas, and other site improvements. Construction began in December of last year and currently ongoing. The project is anticipated to be complete by the end of 2026. Actual real estate investment by the end of last year was $100,000, with construction progress totaling nearly $2 million by February of this year. Personal property improvements included an estimated $11.5 million for manufacturing equipment. Actual personal property investment by the end of last year was $500,000, with construction progress totals being almost $1 million by the end of February this year. When the abatement was filed in mid-October last year, they had total employment was listed at 139, with an additional 73 jobs to be added over the life of the project. By the end of last year, the company had already hired an additional 21 employees, and additional employees are anticipated once the expanded and new product lines are operational. And President Hicksonbaugh asked that representatives from both WellPet be present tonight and with the Barak Group, and there is a group here in the council chambers present for WellPet, and then Near Davidson is online if you have questions on the Steelhead Apartments.
right.
So if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, and thank you for the work that you and staff did to put this information together. It's very well done, as usual. Any questions for Mr. Spear? Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the proposed resolution? If you would, please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed resolution? Is there anyone in attendance this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? I do have some questions for our friends from Wellness Pet, so think you're good to go.
Oh, good. I'm Amanda Turnwald, 1011 West 11th Street, Mishawaka, representing as the Director of Plant Operations for Wellness Pet. I do have some prepared remarks if you would like me to start in there. If you want to just start with questions, we can do that as well.
Why don't you go ahead with your remarks, and we'll jump in with questions after.
Okay, perfect. Council President Hicksonbaugh and members of the council, thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight and to provide you with an update of the activities at Wellness Pet Mishawaka. First, Wellness Pet prides itself on being a good corporate citizen. We do this in a number of ways. An example is that every Thursday, our leadership team delivers lunch to seniors in the West End or Council District 1 through Meals on Wheels. Another example was our performance in our 2015 abatement for a high-speed packaging line. The line is operational, plus our investments, employment, and payroll that exceeded the projected amounts. On our 2021 abatement, last year, I came before council and was transparent about the status of projects. I am happy to do that again tonight. We implemented our odor mitigation project. This was operational mid-March 2023. Since it's a new system, we are still fine-tuning it. Additionally, we have found operational efficiencies that mean we operate Monday through Friday and are not typically operational on weekends. These efficiencies have not negatively impacted our workforce. Our employment levels are nearly the same, plus we currently have 19 open positions. If you know anyone looking, send them our way. Additionally, our pay has continued to increase last year. Our payroll was $7 million, which is 15% higher than the projected numbers. Last year, we invested $5.7 million in actual personal property, and to date have invested $400,000 in actual real estate. As noted last year, the majority of personal property improvements have been placed on hold. That status has not changed. As always, whenever we receive communication from city staff or elected officials, we provide prompt responses, which is why I'm here tonight. If any of you want to come do a plant tour, we are happy to have you out. In conclusion, we continue to be a good corporate citizen and are happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Turnwald? Mr. Emmons?
Thank you. Excuse me, thank you, Mr. President. I have a few questions. First of all, for clarification, the first one, you said the odor equipment doesn't operate on the weekend, or was I misunderstood that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
When you talked about the new equipment for odor, to contain the odor, did you say it's not functional on the weekend, or did I hit you wrong?
We don't run on the weekends typically any longer. So we were, last year, we were a
Oh, you're not
24/7
processing
operation.
anything anymore on the weekend?
Not typically. We might have 1 or 2 days on the weekends
Okay,
in a month, but we are a Monday through Friday operation at this time. So there is no need for an odor mitigation because we're not running.
okay, okay. And next one is, the odor was pretty prevalent today. And I live in, I don't know where if you know where I live on 13th Street. And it was really stagnant, and I had my garage door open, and I stepped out in the garage, and it knocked me, bam. And it also, last week, the same thing, the odor. And what bothers me is, it was on a very nice day, and if we're gonna have the summer with nice days and can't be out in our yard and enjoy the weather, I've got a problem, because you said that this, maybe not you, but your company said that this equipment would eliminate the odor of about 88% or more, and then with the smokestack, it would really eliminate it. I don't see where the odor has been eliminated at all.
Well, we continue to work on some commissioning problems that we have been having. I did not have any issues with the odor today that was at our facility. If you have that problem, Mr. Emmons, my information is in that packet. I can smell what's in the area and, in my direction, over off of Dragoon. Please feel free to reach out to one of us. I know that our maintenance and engineering manager, who is also here as well, he was in contact with Vic over in the city as well. And we're continuing to work through some problems with, not problems, but just regular commissioning type of things that are new to any new system. So, if you're smelling something, we would love to have you reach out to us.
Well, it was there today. I can attest to that. fact I can tell is that when the FedEx guy made it deliver at my house, he wondered what was going on. And I was kind of embarrassed to think maybe he thought it was my house. But, no, the odor was really, really bad. Also, I have a concern. A year ago, when you came, not you, but your company came and asked for the abatement and that. And I specifically asked on the floor of the council to please keep us advised throughout the year of what's going on. Not once was I contacted. Not once when I asked for a meeting was I contacted for about the meeting. And here you are today up here talking about the abatement, and you're not living up to it. I know, when I, as a council member representing the city, ask a company that wants an abatement to please keep us advised of what's going on, and nothing happens. I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, so when I was here last year, I did say that we would have the abatement, the odor mitigation system. Everything else was on hold with the exception of the odor mitigation system. And we did say that we would have that up and functionally before the end of Q1 of this year. And it was up. March 17th was the day that we commissioned that line within our facility. So we did meet that timeline that I did guarantee.
I'm not talking about meeting your timeline. I'm talking about contacting this council and me to set up a meeting to see where we were at. I also asked that you set up a meeting with me and my constituents of what the progress was. Nothing was done. Overlooked.
Yeah,
Forgotten.
as we talked about at the last council meeting, when that was brought up, we mentioned that we would not be able to do that due to extenuating circumstances, as I'm sure some of you are aware of
When you say the last council meeting, last year?
last year.
Well, Mr. Tajian made the statement at that meeting that he would be in touch. Now, I don't know whether he's with your company
He
anymore.
is no longer with Wellness Pet.
So, you know, he promised to keep in touch, and nothing was done. And I wasn't informed that he was no longer with your company. So I have some problems with that communication level with WellPet.
I understand, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Volker?
Thank you. Thanks for coming today. I just wondered if you could give us any information regarding the projects that are on hold. Are there any plans for them to move forward? Are they, what, I mean,
Yeah,
what
so
does
they're
that
still
mean?
on hold due to the inflationary costs and external pressures on the business from last year. We still are not in a position to proceed with the building of the extra dryer building. We do continue to do plant bin replacements. We did install the screening portions that we had intended to purchase. So we're still moving forward with pieces of the overall program, but as far as the building that was supposed to expand the building, that is on hold.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Compton?
Thank you. Ms. Turnwald, you said you installed the new odor control system, and that's up and running,
Yes, sir.
and there's a new stack, is that correct? Or are you using the same stack that you had prior?
The stack heights didn't change significantly, if that's where the question is going.
That's the
Yes,
question.
they
Okay,
did increase slightly. We did change the pattern of where their stack is extending out of the building.
Have you done any studies on the amount of odor that has been reduced?
We have not at this time because we are still in commissioning. The system's been running for 4 weeks, so we want to make sure that we get through any of the bugs that we have with our system before we go and do that testing. Additionally, for those of you who live in the area, you know that during the summer, the smell is a little bit stronger or was a little bit stronger. I would prefer that we wait until that time of year so that we're getting a true test of what this system is doing, so that when I provide that information, that we're able to say, you know, we tested it at one of the worst times for this, what we could be seeing, and that we have that data.
Okay. How high is the stack that's there now?
42 feet,
Okay.
roughly.
And we were talking about like twice that much or more initially, correct?
Yes, sir.
And if the building is ever built, will that happen?
If the building were to be built in the future, the dryers would be at the top of the building and the stack would be higher.
The last few abatements that we have provided WellPet, for me personally, for one councilman, weighed heavily on reducing the odor. That is what Wellness Pet came to the podium, and that's, besides all the other things they were going to do, that's how they represented themselves. And that's what sold this councilman on the abatement. And I believe this councilman said last time, if we weren't ready to move forward to really, do what we said we were going to do, that I would have trouble supporting that. And that's where I'm at tonight. I know that this is corporate. I know, that, I understand what's taken place, but that doesn't change where I sit and the constituents from Mishawaka in that district. Doesn't change their, their ability to go outside and quality of life. That's the term I was looking for. And I question the good corporate citizen here.
Sir,
Just
sir,
a little bit.
I'm going to ask you to wait.
Just a little bit, I question the good corporate citizen for that, for the lack of working with Mr. Emmons. I'm not so sure we can, you're right there, at least in this council, that's a subjective thing, that, but for this person who is defining that, I'm having trouble with that. But I thank you for coming here. I do appreciate the information. And I think the gentleman behind you has something more to tell me.
Let's conclude with any questions that we had for Mrs. Turnwald, and then we'll turn it over to other representatives of Wellness Pet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mamalante.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mrs. Turnwald, for coming this evening. A couple quick questions. You'd mentioned the air testing. Just a couple questions regarding that. One, how long does that take to get the results?
Unfortunately, that's prior to my tenure with Wellness. I know that Eric, the gentleman behind me, is working with the previous company to try and get that scheduled. I want to say that it took about a month and a half to get the testing out, and then to get the report was a little bit longer, but I don't have that information right in front of me to give you a concrete answer.
Okay. And would you guess that it's a fairly expensive test?
It is a fairly expensive test, yes.
And when you had made the comment regarding wanting to test it in the summer versus present, where is that testing unit placed? Is it placed
So-
near the stack, or is it placed?
So what they did last
50 miles
time,
or-
testing my memory here, is they took a bag and put it on our stack, and then captured the air, and then sent it out to do testing on it. And it was basically testing put in front of a panel of people, and then there's some, not just subjective testing as well. But it was, if I remember, there were some comments of like, someone was smelling it and was like, oh, well, it smells like cat food, or it smells like burnt Tootsie Rolls. There's just some, it was basically that subjective, like someone would smell the smell and then say whether they smelled something or what it smelled like, and whether it was a unpleasant smell. But then there's also some more concrete testing as well associated with it.
So if that is the procedure, I guess I'm confused how the summer, if it's capturing it directly out of the stack, I wouldn't think, and I'm no scientist or chemist, but I wouldn't think that the summer would be any different than the winter.
The humidity also plays a role in how much it hangs around the facility. So if it's really humid, our stacks don't expel as well, based off of the fact that it's trying to get through the atmosphere. So then we have, it's more condensed in that spot, I would think. I'm also not an odor scientist, which is why we are reaching out to that group to get them scheduled and to do the testing, and we'll go with whatever their recommendation is on that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Belovich.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for coming tonight. The testing that's done, that test is conducted by a third party? It's not somebody within the organization?
No, sir. It's not something that is a wellness pet specialty. So we actually send that out to a third-party consultant group. I believe we used Trinity Consultant last time.
And is this the same organization that has been testing all along?
It will be the same organization that did our previous testing. We will use them as well this time.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Mrs. Turner?
I just got one.
Mr. Emmons?
Yeah, just one more follow-up question. Today, did you smell the odor today?
I did not. I
Well,
didn't smell
I was
it at my
surprised
house.
because of the wind. I would think we would have had an odor, but we did.
Yeah.
And the wind is supposed to dissipate a lot of that odor, and it's not working. So,
Yeah.
again, when do you plan on doing the testing again? I mean, to make sure that the system is working correctly and dissipating that odor.
We plan to do the test. I don't have a date on when it will be scheduled and completed.
Do you plan on having done before summer?
I don't have a date at this time, sir.
So you're saying that we may go through another summer with the odor?
That is not what I'm saying. I said I don't have a date at this time, so I'm trying to get that scheduled. We just commissioned the line on March 17th. It's been 4 weeks since we've had it up and going, so we have some kinks that we're working through. Once it's up and going, we have it on our schedule to get it done. We just want to make sure that the system is fully functional and not having any issues.
Can you keep this council advised as your timetable of how you're going?
That will be my intention moving forward, yes.
I would appreciate that you do that, so that this council is aware of what the scheduling is to try to dissipate all that odor. And that's so we don't go through a summer like we did last summer. I would greatly appreciate that.
Yep.
And I know my community would too. Because it's basically only except in my area, most likely, it's where it affects. Now, sometimes you can smell it elsewhere, but it's very, very prevalent in the West End where I live, and where most of the people live in the area of the town. And I think it's your responsibility or your company's responsibility to have the neighbors in that area have a quality of life, that they don't have to be indoors, especially Berkeley Circle, which is a retirement basically community, to where they can't get out because of the odor. So I greatly appreciate all you can do to help eliminate the odor so that we can have quality life in our area. And again, appreciate you letting us know the progress of the elimination of the odor with that equipment. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Then, Amanda, you're not escaping that quickly. But before I ask a couple questions, I want to thank you for being here and for the information that you've shared both last year and this year. You were kind enough to speak with me by phone on Friday, and I appreciate the information that you shared there as well. I agree with you that WellPet is a good corporate citizen in Mishawaka. You employ a lot of people, you pay them well. With regard to this abatement, your payroll is reflected as having increased, so that certainly is fair to note for the record.
Yeah.
Things have gone well in the partnership between the city and WellPet for many years, with the exception of the odor control issue that Mr. Compton referenced, and then the status of these last two abatements. So I want to ask a couple questions about the most recent abatements.
Sure.
When you speak about the decision to make the full investment and to move forward with the full project being put on hold, is that a decision that has been made at the local level or at a corporate level elsewhere?
The decision to put the project on hold was made at a headquarters level, so our corporate offices make those decisions.
And where are your corporate offices located?
Boston, Massachusetts. Well, Tewksbury, which is right outside of Boston.
Okay. And if I understood you correctly with your answer to my colleague's question, while the project is on hold, there isn't a defined timeline that's been established for when the hold would be lifted and the project would move forward.
There is no timeline currently.
As a follow-up to that, is it possible to even indicate that you anticipate that the hold will ever be lifted?
At this time, I don't know.
It's an unknown.
Yeah.
Okay. So as Mr. Spear referenced, I want to make sure that I'm looking at the investment in the proper context. On the real estate side, the anticipated investment was $14.7 million. And to date, WellPet has invested $410,425. Does that sound about right to you?
Yes.
All right. And then by my math, and this is where I really want you to double check me. On the real estate side, that looks to me to break down to about a 2.79% investment to this point.
Yes, sir.
Plus or minus, would you agree with that?
I was going to say less than 10%. It's
So let's
easier
go
math.
Just under 3%. And then on the personal property side, the equipment, including the pollution control, air quality control equipment that we've referred to several times this evening, that was anticipated to be, and it involved an expansion of some production lines and some other investment on Wellness Pet's part. But that was, at the time the abatement was granted, estimated to be $27.9 million. And to date, the investment is $5,670,798,
Yes.
which is a significant investment, but still, when I do the math, that appears on the personal property side to be just a little bit over 20% of the investment that was anticipated when we approved this.
Yes, the majority of that was in the odor mitigation.
Okay. But the percentages,
They're correct.
okay, thank you. I struggle with this like Mr. Compton does, only because as much as I appreciate what Wellness Pet does in the community, to me, these abatements boil down to an agreement between the city and its representatives and the recipient of the abatement. We agreed to do what we said we would do, which is phase in the taxes over the course of time, and then we ask the recipients to make the investments and to hire the folks that they indicate they're going to hire. We talked about the fact that your payroll has risen, so that's to your credit. With regard to the jobs, plus or minus, we're in the ballpark, but you have, in this economy, everybody's struggling to fill their vacancies, so I certainly wouldn't hold you accountable for that too much. So the job levels are decent. It's that investment that is significantly below where we're at. One of the things that we have to find in order to determine whether or not a recipient of a tax abatement is in substantial compliance with their statement of benefits that they originally filed is that their failure to comply was caused by factors beyond the control of the property owner, in this case, Wellness Pet. Is there anything that you can share with us tonight to round out that concept, that the fact that the project is on hold, the fact that the investment hasn't been made, other than the economic factors that everybody in the world is subject to at this point in time, is there anything else that you can share that would help us determine that the fact that this investment hasn't been made is beyond the control of Wellness Pet?
Yeah, other than economic factors with the unprecedented steel prices, most of that building was steel, right? It was a 100-foot tall when all said and done, right? And steel prices from the time that we did the engineering study to the time that we were getting ready to do the purchase order had at least tripled. I wasn't the director at the time, so I don't have that number, but it skyrocketed, making that building way more than what we had anticipated, which made it so that it wasn't something that could be done at that time.
And it was those same economic pressures that caused the odor control equipment only to be installed within the last 4 weeks rather than all of the prior calendar year, which passed before it was installed?
Yeah, so the reason that the odor mitigation system didn't get installed and finalized is that steel, we had to get the steel prices, steel ordering was crazy as well. So not only were the prices high, the lead time on steel to get steel to do anything was astronomical. So we had placed orders back in 2021 for all of the odor mitigation system, and it didn't start arriving in our facility until the end of last year. So we then had to build the building around it, install it, and get it up and going. So it was the lead times that all factories, in manufacturing, we had things that had an 180-day lead time jump to 275. So all manufacturing facilities were going through that same type of lead time change which we encountered with a lot of our vendors for building the building. Even the ionic system itself had a long lead time during the COVID time as well as coming out of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Is there anything else that you want to share with us before we invite the other representative of Wellness Pet who was so eager to speak earlier to the podium so that he can share some information with us?
Now I'll hand over to Eric over here.
Okay, thank you. And sir, if you would, please begin by stating your name and address for the record.
Eric Steenbeck, also from Wellness Pet, 1011 West 11th Street. I just wanted to clarify, there were some questions about stack height and the function of the system overall. And, regardless of whether it's 90 feet high, 42 feet high, wherever it ends up, the way that this system works makes that kind of a moot point. So we're passing our air through a cold plasma net, which is ionizing the air, which is degrading and oxidizing all of those pollutants and the microorganisms that are in the air that are causing those smells. So what's being exhausted simply does not have those things in it anymore, regardless of whether it's 90 feet up or 42 feet up. So I'm confident that as we get this system running properly, we're going to take care, we'll be able to prove through testing that the system works and that the odor will be abated. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that. This is not something like our old system where we're just trying to mask odor. We are eliminating odor in this case.
Thank you. Any questions? Mrs. Volker?
Is that like OxyClean?
What's that?
It sounds like OxyClean.
No,
So-
no, not quite like oxy.
Febreze.
It's a
Febreze would be
cold
okay.
plasma created by electrode that we're running power across basically banks of plates that create the cold plasma, which is in all reality creating ozone, O3, and sanitizing the air, causing everything to break down.
Thank you.
Mr. Emmons?
Thank you, Mr. President. Did I hear you right that you say that with the equipment running properly, that the odor should be eliminated? Did I
Yes.
hear you right?
Correct. As much as possible, sorry.
Pardon?
As much as possible.
Well, that doesn't really secure me on that.
I'm confident that we can prove through testing that we can reach the limits that we've reached.
Okay, so in the past, they said that whatever odor was not eliminated by the odor equipment, that the raise of the smokestack would eliminate it completely. Now you're saying that the smokestack is not going to go up any higher than what it is. So now it's kind of like you're double talking from the last time that you're not going to be able to eliminate all the odor with the equipment. So then with the smokestack being raised, it would eliminate it.
I can't really speak to what was talked about last time. I wasn't with the company at that time. I just wanted to really speak to the functionality and the way that the system works
Okay.
currently.
So could you give me a rough idea of how much percentage it might eliminate?
I do not know that.
So we're still in the dark about whether we're going to have an odor or not.
That's what the testing is going to be for.
Okay. Again, as I expressed before, I'd like for this council to have a timeline of what you're doing, the testing, and everything like that, to keep us abreast of what's going on, so that we know when that odor could be eliminated, and if it can't be eliminated.
Absolutely.
So, and also, I'd like to have your phone numbers, so I can call when we have the odor.
I actually gave mine to Vic so that he could send it over to you on Friday.
Okay? I
And
appreciate that.
Amanda's is in the packet.
Okay, appreciate it, so that I can, when the odor is prevalent, I can
Absolutely.
call
Reach
you
out to
and let you know. And I appreciate, you said that you don't operate the plant on the weekends, is that correct? That's a
Not
blessing.
every weekend,
That's
yep.
a blessing,
Not
I
typically.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mamalante?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Steenbeck, for your presentation this evening. Just kind of to piggyback off of a comment that Mrs. Turnwald had made, you guys are just got it commissioned, making some tweaks. So is it your responsibility to adjust the ions, et cetera, this unit to control it, or is it the manufacturer?
It's the manufacturer. So we're working with the manufacturer to continually monitor the system, to work through all the commissioning issues that we've found, and kind of debug the system as we find things.
And do they come on site, or is this all remote?
Remote. So they came on site for the initial commissioning, and then they are able to remote in and look through our logic and identify problems for us as we find them.
And pardon my ignorance here, but I would think that if the line's running, you walk outside, you smell it, then you guys could call
Right.
the manufacturer. So I would think that, and again, pardon my ignorance on this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think that they would be able to try to remedy that issue rather quickly.
They're very responsive, yes.
Okay. So at this point, do they have any ideas why this is taking so long to eliminate the odor?
No, I mean, we found multiple issues within the programming logic and within the system ourselves, stuff that was missed during commissioning. And as we resolve them, the system continues to operate better and better. As with any large project, you're going to have these type of things come up, and it takes a while to work them out.
And the next one is more of a comment on the portion of the testing when they have the folks sitting around a table smelling that bag. If you could invite Mr. Emmons to that, that'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Mr. Compton?
Yes, Eric, thank you for the comments. I appreciate that. And so you know, you weren't here when the abatement was applied for.
Correct.
What we were told was that this new system would eliminate, not all of it, but not just mask the odor, as you said. So it was a process that would kill the smoke, kill the odor, not
Correct.
smoke, but kill the odor. Then we were told by moving it up to 90 feet in the air, we would never smell it again. We would likely never smell it again. So I understand what you're saying, that the process is the process, and it's not going to work any better at 42 feet than it does at 90 feet, but when you release that, it's what we smell. So if it's at 90 feet, my thought is, I'm not a meteorologist, and I've never really studied the science, but I stayed at a Holiday Inn. And they told me that at 90 feet, it helps even more eliminate the ability to smell it. So we were sold that was going to happen. And again, just so you know, at the last meeting, because there's been a meeting in between approving it, you folks have been here a year ago talking about what you weren't able to do. They started backpedaling then, too, on, the height isn't going to make that much difference. I disagree with that. I understand it's a corporate problem, and I understand your position and what you're doing. But I disagree that adding the building and moving this up, like was originally intended, I think would have been the best for all of us. I'm not overly optimistic that at this point, only because of history. I hope you prove me wrong, but I'm not overly
look forward to it.
optimistic at this point that we're going to resolve this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Steenbeck, thank you for the clarification. And you make a fair point. And I certainly wouldn't hold you accountable for the statements that were made by others when you weren't here. But Wellness Pet, as an organization, is accountable for the statements that all of its representatives over the course of several years made with regard to this. And to follow up on some of the points raised by Mr. Compton and others, you know a lot more about this than I do, I'll acknowledge that. But when you say that it doesn't appear that the elevation of the air quality equipment will have an impact on the efficacy of the equipment, is that your opinion alone, or is that based upon the representations that the manufacturer and the installers have made during the process?
That's based on my opinion and my understanding of the system. I have not specifically spoke to the manufacturer about that. That's purely based on my understanding of how the system works and why it works.
And I heard your answer earlier. It was very diplomatically stated with regard to the anticipated efficacy of the equipment. But I'm like Mr. Compton. I remember back when this abatement was first approved, and I have a strong recollection that the commitment was made that it was going to be 90 to 95% effective. Is there any quantification that you can provide at this point in time? And I see Mrs. Turnwald shaking her head, which is...
Not at this time.
If I was your lawyer, I'd tell you the same thing. But that's a problem for me. And it's only because of what we were told and then now what's being delivered. So any further peace of mind that you can provide that even at the lower level, this equipment, we don't just hope that it's going to be effective, but that it is going to be effective.
The only thing I can provide at this point is a touch point that I will ensure that you guys are made aware of where we're at in the process, how the process is going, and maintain that communication that you were looking for over the course of this time.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Steenbeck? Mrs. DeMay?
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening. Can you tell me, do you have any other companies that use this?
I don't
How is
know
there-
of any other companies that use this specific technology, or the technology themselves. I know that it's out there. It's being used in similar applications. I haven't personally worked on another system specifically like this one.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Volker?
Thank you. Mrs. DeMaid read my mind and asked the question that I was going to ask. However, what I was wondering about is if it would be possible for, and maybe this is a stretch, but for you to talk to the manufacturer, just to give us some information, peace of mind, talk to the manufacturer and ask them for information about models, other companies that are using this product, and a little bit about the process, how long it's taken, and perhaps the success rate that they have experienced. That might be helpful to us moving forward.
I can certainly reach out to them and see if that's a feasible idea.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Evans?
Yeah, Mr. President, just a clarification, last when this was presented to us, Mr. Tatiana said that there were 4 other companies that were using this system throughout the United States, and it has eliminated the odor.
Okay.
Now, he was saying that with the new equipment and the smokestack, it eliminated it. Now, you're saying that you're not going to have the smokestack, but this equipment should eliminate it. Now, it would be nice if you would contact these other 4 companies or equipment places or manufacturer places that are using this equipment and verify that it will work without a without a smokestack.
I can get some, if I can get some companies identified, I can definitely get some background.
Well, it was stated at our meeting that there were 4 other manufacturing of dog food and this type of odor that eliminated it.
I'm not aware of those, though. I'll have to do some digging to find those for you, but I can certainly look into them.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Steenbeck then? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And then I also have some questions for the representatives of the Brock Group and Steelhead Apartments. Is there anyone participating remotely or in person to answer questions on behalf of the Steelhead Apartments abatement?
Hello. Tony Lane, 400 East Center Street, North Liberty. I'm a manager for Brock Group.
All right. In the information, thank you for being here, sir. In the information that our staff provided us leading up to tonight, there was an indication that once you got into the project, and admittedly, you've made a significant investment in this property, and before I go any further, I want to thank Brock Group for taking this on. This has been
It's a
a
nice
problem
floor.
property in Mishawaka for years, so I was happy to vote in favor of this abatement, and I wish you success moving forward. But in the information that we received, there was an indication that you found some unanticipated issues with regard to the building and that the property was on hold. So my hope was that you could share with us a little bit more information about what the next steps looks like. How long, do you have any ability to be able to tell us how long this is going to be on hold and what needs to be determined in order to move forward? And will there be any change in the complexion of the property or the project as it was originally explained to us?
For sure. We are still in the early stages of this process. We had our demolition crew there in January, gutted it. We're able to see a lot more things than we were trying to see before. At this time, I don't have any schedule for you guys. January, we stopped the demolition, and then we had to go through all the architectural work, design work, and all this stuff. But once we ran into some complications, some of our designs, it wasn't going to match, one, code, and then two, our budget-wise. So at this time, we are on hold. But hopefully within the next 2 months, we'll have more information that we can give on maybe a schedule.
Well, that'd be appreciated. I would be concerned if we went a whole year and we were at this point next year.
Right.
And you were reporting back to the community, well, we're still trying to work through it. That's
No, yeah.
understandable with certain problems, but I appreciate what you said about hoping to have some information to share in the next couple months. And if you can get that to the planning staff, I'm sure they'll be happy to share that with us and provide us with an update.
Absolutely. Yep.
So if you can keep us apprised, that would be appreciated. Any other questions? Mr. Hazen?
Where were we at on the budget? Were you 2 million off, you're 3 million off, 10 million?
It was several million, yes, several million. Yeah, the code requirements to add for the doors had to go from 32 to 36. There's rebar and walls when we were trying to connect rooms and stuff like that, EFIS issues, all utility stuff. So there's still, we're also in options of maybe changing some things of what we do on the property, or even the possibility of just tearing it down. So I'm getting numbers for demolitions just to have that on the table. But we prefer to keep, it's got strong bones, and we want to keep the foundation there. But if it's time to go, it might be time to go. But that's still all in the very beginning process where we're at.
Thank you. Other questions? Mr. Mamalenti?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Lane. And I know you probably can't answer this, but just for my own peace of mind, seeing what you've gotten your hands into and crazy amount of money that it may take to continue this, are you guys at a stage where it's 4th and 20, I'm hunting, we're going to end this project, or you still plan to find a way to make this project work? It just may be a little bit different in terms of, like you'd mentioned, demolition, maybe cut back on some of the design work, et cetera. Can you give me an idea?
Yeah, well, the owner wants to start yesterday, so he wants to go. But obviously, we have to be careful this year with the economy and all the prices for everything skyrocketing. Interest rates was a big hit on us. When he was first buying the building, it was low, now it's high, and it could go higher. But I'm not sure if I answered what you had, but yeah, we want that property to look beautiful. It's a great spot. I'm excited for the name of it to come out for all the locals who go fishing over there. But yeah, we wanted to start yesterday, but just gotta make sure everything's good.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Then thank you again, sir. We'll look forward to that follow-up communication. Hopefully it is within the next couple months. And if you can, not only provide us with some information on the anticipated timeline for moving forward, but if there are going to be those changes in the scope of the project or the complexion of it that you referenced, let us know about that as well.
Sure. And we're also, if you guys have ideas or what the city might want or something like that, we definitely are all ears open. So.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we are still at the point of questions and comments from the council. I will say that, as was referenced earlier, I appreciate both of the tax abatement recipients being here this evening. And certainly, they're in different places in the process. Wellness Pet, I do believe is a good corporate citizen, and they have had a track record of success on so many levels in Mishawaka. But with regard to this abatement, the 2021 two-part abatement, I really struggle to find that they are in substantial compliance. And I can appreciate the comments with regard to the economy. We have to acknowledge that. But to be substantially compliant, I think, in my mind, it's logically and legally required to be further along down the road. If 75% of the investment had been made, heck, if 50% of the investment had been made, I would feel much more comfortable finding this to be in substantial compliance. But on the real estate end, when we're looking at just under 3%, and on the personal property end, when we're looking at 20%, I can't in good conscience find that this is substantially compliant, nor can I find, based upon the evidence that's been presented to this point in time, that it's due to factors that are beyond the control of Wellness Pet. So I'm prepared to vote in favor of all of the compliance reports and the tax abatement recipients, with the exception of the two Wellness Pet 2021 abatements. Mr. Compton.
Mr. President, that said, I agree with you. I just throw in, I agree with the investment is not as far along as we feel it should be, and with the issue of the odor control being of concern. With those things in mind, I'd like to make a motion that we pull out the, in this resolution, that we separate the Wellness Pet portion from the rest of the resolution and vote on them separately.
As a point of clarification, is that with respect to the Wellness Pet 2021 tax abatements only?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to amend proposed resolution 2023-06 by deleting all specific references to both Wellness Pet 2021 tax abatements. Are there any additional questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, all those in favor of the proposed amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The amendment carries. And then at this time, I will call for the question and a vote on proposed resolution 2023-06 as amended.
Question.
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mr. Hazen.
Yes.
Mr. Belovich.
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti.
Yes.
Mr. Benicki.
Yes.
Mr. Emmons.
Yes.
Mrs. DeMade.
Yes.
Mr. Compton.
Yes.
Mrs. Volker.
Yes.
Mr. Hixenbaugh.
Yes.
Proposed resolution R 2023-06 as amended passes 9-0.
Thank you. And then consistent with Mr. Compton's motion to, with respect to the two Wellness Pet 2021 tax abatement requests, at this time, I will call for the question as to whether or not Wellness Pet has substantially complied with their statement of benefits for those two 2021 tax abatements.
Question.
Any additional questions or comments from the council? Mr. Compton.
Does the folks from Wellness Pet understand where this goes from here, Mr. President? Do you know that?
I was just going to get into that for the
Okay.
record, that if the council were to find that Wellness Pet is not in substantial compliance or has not substantially complied with the statement of benefits, it does not automatically revoke the tax abatements pursuant to Indiana law. Rather, it triggers a separate process where Wellness Pet would receive notice from the council that we will be conducting a separate hearing within 30 days from the date of the mailing for purposes of further considering Wellness Pet's compliance with these two tax abatements. At that time, Wellness Pet and other interested parties would have an opportunity to be able to submit any additional information that they want us to consider, and a subsequent vote would need to take place in order to finalize our review of Wellness Pet's 2021 tax abatement requests. And I'll ask Mr. Triple to clean up any of my mess if I misstated any of the statutory information.
I think you stated it correctly, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Triple. Does that answer your question, Mr. Compton?
It does, thank you.
Any additional questions or comments from the council? Then, Madam Clerk, would you please?
I didn't hear a second.
Mr. Hazen?
So the motion is going to be that they're not in compliance, right? We're going to find them not in compliance.
Yes, the compliance of Wellness Pets 2021 abatements is in front of us. A yes vote finds them to be in substantial compliance, and no vote finds them to not be in compliance.
Thank you for answering.
Good point of clarification, Mr. Hazen. So, Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council on the Wellness Pet 2021 tax abatements?
Mr. Hazen,
No.
Mr. Belovich,
No.
Mr. Mamalenti,
No.
Mr. Benicki,
No.
Mr. Emmons,
No.
Mrs. DeMade,
No.
Mr. Compton,
No.
Mrs. Volker,
No.
Mr. Hicksonbaugh.
No.
The vote is 0 to 9. They are not in compliance.
Thank you. Then, as it was stated earlier, that will trigger the separate process with regard to Wellness Pets 2021 tax abatements. And for the record, I would welcome the opportunity to take a tour of the facility as Mrs. Turnwald graciously offered. So if we can try to work to schedule that between now and the date of the hearing, that'd be appreciated. Thank you.
Mr. President, could I put in a request?
Mr. Mamalenti.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to add a request to Mrs. Turnwald and Mr. Steinbeck. If it's possible within those 30 days, if we could get kind of the technical data sheet or the spec sheet of the unit that was installed. And I know it's very difficult to get the testing completed prior to that, but if you guys could make some sort of effort to show some adjustments that you've made and the improvements that have been made, and also the names of the companies, if you can get that are currently utilizing this system, and I'm sure the manufacturer that you bought the equipment from can provide that, or if they feel comfortable, they could provide that information to us as well. And I know it may be difficult, but I think it would help in your favor if they could attend the meeting as well, so we could maybe ask some more technical questions that you guys may not be able to answer. So, high demands, but see what you can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And with that, we'll move into ordinances on second reading.
Proposed ordinance number 2023-11, an ordinance amending Chapter 137 of the Municipal Code of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana, as from time to time amended, commonly known as the zoning ordinance of 1966 of the City of Mishawaka, Indiana. This is a PUD amendment to allow drive-through restaurant, Scooters Coffee, northwest corner of 12th Street and Harrison Road and Capitol Avenue.
Thank you. May we have the committee report, please?
Yes, Mr. President, to the members of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, your Committee on Land Use Planning, to whom was referred the matter of proposed ordinance 2023-11, report that they have examined said matter and that their opinion should be adopted. This is signed by the entire committee, and I move for its acceptance.
Second.
Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the committee report. Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll now move into second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 2023-11. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, please come forward.
Steve Ruby at Marks Consulting, 315 West Jefferson, South Bend, Indiana, representing the petitioner, 1635 Ironwood LLC, and the future contingent developer, Scooters Coffee. This is a request, obviously, with the PUD to allow for one drive-through restaurant facility as well as multi-tenant commercial uses on the property. It's an amendment from the PUD that was established back in, I believe, 2003. Since then, that property is sat vacant. So this would allow for the development of that Scooters Coffee facility, and we're asking for your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Ruby? Mr. Emmons?
Thank you, Mr. President. as at the planning commission, I stressed the concern about the traffic going in and out there at the corner of that very busy intersection of
Correct.
Capitol and that. So, I mean, can you reassure me that it is not going to be a problem?
I don't believe this will be a problem. We've been in discussion with the engineering department, and we fully intend to meet the entrance and exit requirements for this type of facility. So we'll be working through those engineering elements as we progress with the design to accommodate this facility.
Because my concern is, as you're going east to make that turn into there, because also you're going to be turning also left onto Capitol.
Correct.
At the same time. And I'm just afraid that there's going to be congestion and accidents in there, the people maybe not turning their turn light on or whatever, and sudden stops. And like I say, that is a very tight
Yes.
area that you're requesting.
Yes, there's a widened median area there that will allow for turning movements into it as you're heading to the east. And then as you're heading west, we'll look at that if there's a potential need for a decel, and it's going to be based upon traffic analysis and decel requirements.
Okay. Well, thank you. I just hope that,
Yep.
it doesn't cause a problem
Correct.
going into that restaurant with making that left-hand turn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Ruby? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? If you would, please come forward. Then is there, oh, please. I jumped the gun, Mr. Grable, my apologies.
Joe Grable, I reside at 602 Lincoln Way West in Mishawaka. I believe the site plan reflects the fact that there's an access drive that runs along the frontage of the property so that the exit from the property would be pretty far to the west. And so that should allow easy ingress, egress far enough away from the intersection that it shouldn't be an issue. And that was a requirement of NDOT when they originally obtained the right-of-way, that there could not be ingress and egress close to the intersection.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Grable? Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone physically present this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Are there any council members who wish to speak? If not, then I call for the question.
Question?
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Benicki?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Mrs. DeMade?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Hicksonbaum?
Yes.
Proposed ordinance passes 9-0. Proposed ordinance number 2023-12, an ordinance concerning the construction of additions and improvements to the sewage works of the city of Mishawaka, the issuance of revenue bonds to provide the cost thereof, the collection, segregation, and distribution of the revenues of said works, the safeguarding of the interests of the owners of said revenue bonds, other matters connected therewith, including the issuance of notes in anticipation of bonds, and repealing ordinances inconsistent herewith.
Thank you. May we have the committee report, please?
Yes, Mr. President. To the members of the Common Council of the City of Mishawaka, your Committee on Public Improvements, to whom was referred the matter of proposed ordinance number 2023-12, report that they have examined said matter and that in their opinion it should be adopted. This is signed by the entire committee, and I move for its acceptance.
Is there a second? Thank you. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the committee report. Any additional questions or comments from the council? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. This is the second reading and public hearing on proposed ordinance 2023-12. Anyone wishing to speak in favor, if you would, please come forward.
Good evening, councilors. My name is Scott Frizzell, and I'm an attorney with the law firm Krieg DeVault, and we are serving as bond counsel for the city's issuance of the Sewage Works revenue bonds of 2023. So this ordinance before you this evening approves the construction of certain necessary additions, improvements, and extensions to the city's sewage works, which improvements are currently estimated to cost approximately $34 million. One thing to note is the bond ordinance will not impact the sewage rates, so those rates will remain consistent with what was last adopted on March 7th, 2017. So the bond ordinance before you this evening authorizes the city to issue sewage works revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $40 million with an interest rate not to exceed 5.5%. The bonds can be issued for up to 35 years, but it's anticipated that the actual term would be 20 years. The bonds will be sold by competitive sale to obtain the best interest rate for the city. The bonds will be payable solely from the net revenues of the city's sewage works and will be issued on parity with certain outstanding bonds, specifically the 2010A, 2015, 2017A, 2017B, and 2018 bonds. The bonds are redeemable at the option of the city, but no sooner than 10 years from the date of issuance and upon 30 days advance notice. And then finally, this ordinance authorizes the city to issue additional parity bonds if future projects are necessary, as long as certain debt service coverage requirements are satisfied. And so that is a high-level overview of the ordinance before you this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Frizzell? Counselor, one follow-up, and we touched on this at the informational meeting, and thank you for participating in that meeting. Although you mentioned that the anticipated cost of the project, if I understood you, is $35 million, if anybody was really an eager beaver and they read this ordinance online, they would pick up on $40 million as being the number that was embedded in the ordinance. Can you talk about the difference between those two numbers and why it's drafted in that fashion?
Yes, Mr. President, that's a great question. So when we draft these bond ordinances, we receive maximum parameters from the city's municipal advisor. Given the current market we're in, prices are fluctuating, costs are increasing daily. So with certain projects still outstanding for bid, we like to add some cushion to have the opportunity, if the project costs do increase, to be able to issue bonds in an additional amount up to that maximum parameter of $40 million. But currently, the projects are anticipated to cost about $35 million.
And just to underscore your earlier point, even if the cost would go beyond that $35 million, but within that $40 million cap, because this was programmed into those rates that were passed in 2016, there wouldn't be an increase in any rates that ratepayers would see as a result of those increased construction costs. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is correct, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor? Please come forward.
Matt Lynch, City of Mishawaka. Honorable President and council members, I want to speak obviously in support of the wastewater projects and the bonds. I have full faith and support that the numbers that have been presented are an excellent representation of the project, both underneath the ground that needs to be done, as well as relates to compliance for the long-term control plan, the combined sewer water overflow. And obviously, not just what's being done underground, but also what's being done above ground with the streets, the curbs, the sidewalks. So as we're making these underground improvements, we're also making improvements, across the board. So it's a comprehensive project that will impact our community for years to come, and I think it's a wise investment. As previously stated, as I understand it, the 2016 rates as presented are reflected in this plan, as well as the rates will not increase as a result of this bonding under construction. I have read over diligently the numbers as presented by Baker and Tilly, as well as done thorough review of the project, and feel that the budget and timeline will achieve what is needed to do both for our neighborhood improvements and in compliance with our long-term control plan. I've had follow-up conversations with Alex from Baker and Tilly and with Becky McGuire, and I feel confident in the numbers and financial plan. I've had conversations reviewed both with Tim Brill and with our engineer, Chris Jamrose. I feel very confident in the plan that's being presented tonight. I would ask for your positive affirmation and your vote in support of this project. I believe this will be a positive thing for the infrastructure below ground, above ground, and will make massive improvements for the city of Mishawaka for years to come.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Lynch? Mr. Hazen?
So what's the percent of the dollars going to the combined sewer overflow?
All of it.
Well, how can we do sidewalks and curbs? I mean, break down what,
Hold on a second. I need to.
well, I'm kind of asking a question, so.
Mr. Lynch,
Yeah,
if you
sorry
wanna-
about that.
If you
We'll
want to
get the
defer to
answer.
Mr. Burrell on that later, I anticipate that he was going to speak to us this evening anyway.
Yes.
Okay.
My apologies for not having that answer. Any other questions?
Any other questions for Mr. Lynch? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor?
My name is Tim Brill. I'm the wastewater division manager. My office is at 1020 Lincoln Way West. Also, if we have specific questions involving the project that we didn't cover at the last informational meeting, Chris Jamrose is also here with me. We can discuss those specific issues. President Hicksonball and honorable council members, I'm proud of the work that we have done and accomplished over the last 30 years. Concerning the improvements in our utility infrastructure, Mishawaka's proactive work has allowed for growth, development, and environmental protection. The revenue bond ordinance is a continuation of our work to build and improve this utility infrastructure and reduce combined sewer overflows. As has been mentioned in the previous speakers, no rate increase is being requested for this bond issue. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Do you have
Thank
that
you.
answer or no?
Any questions for Mr. Brill? I sense Mr. Hazen still has a question.
What's the percentage that's going to go to the combined sewer overflow? Do we know that? And what I'm saying is,
All of the projects are going to, let me say 99% of the projects are combined sewer overflow infrastructure projects involving sewer system. I do have some plant upgrades, some minor plant upgrades at our facility, but they're a minor portion of the bonds that we're pushing. Does that answer your question, Councilman? Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions, Mr. Compton?
Thank you, Mr. Hicksonball. Tim, would you tell us, I know you told us the other night, but we have people out here from the community. You told us the percentage, let me get this right, of our commitment to what we said we would do in combined sewer overflow, when we were negotiating with the Freds, when what we said we were prepared to do, or we have said to them we are going to do.
Correct.
What percentage will this take us to?
This takes us to what we're calling the 4 overflow plan. That means in a typical storm year, there will only be 4 combined sewer overflow events. That's what we are currently in negotiations with the EPA to open and modify our consent decree to that overflow level.
So for the people here, to reword that, we are meeting the commitment we made at 100% on a level of 4 overflows a year.
We also talked about the percent capture you may be referring to. We are 99.5% capture.
Thank you.
Of the CSOs. From our baseline that we've talked about in the past of 1990 till now, we have captured 99.5% of the combined sewer overflows through our work.
Very good. So I guess to state it, we have met the commitment, at the end of this, we will have met the commitment that we made and with the feds in our negotiations. They haven't completely approved that yet,
That's correct.
right?
That's correct.
And it's possible they could tell us it's not good enough,
That's correct.
but, you know, that's a ways off. And it sounded like, from conversation with you, things were leaning in approving what we have done.
I certainly hope so. I can't get into the minds of the federal government, and hopefully we'll never have to. But yes, I think we have a solid plan at the 4 overflow, and these projects, these commitments that we're making with the bonds tonight will cover all of those projects.
And the way we, the city, came up with this decision on what, you know, what the feds were asking and what we proposed, the difference is the ability for our ratepayers to pay for this.
Absolutely.
I mean, this
Absolutely.
comes down to the fact that we can afford this, and that extra point X%
Yep.
was going to be astronomical and burdensome to our ratepayers.
Yes, and we're very fortunate that the council has had the foresight to approve early on this rate structure. So tonight, as we come before you to look for these bonds, we've already accounted for that money that you guys have put forward for us. So there will be no rate increase in this, and there's been a lot of good forethinking on this issue, I believe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for Mr. Brill? Tim, thank you for the information and the work that you've done on this. To follow up on Mr. Compton's questions, and if you don't have this number at your fingertips, I'll understand. But in terms of the city of Mishawaka's investment to date in the separation of these combined sewers, how much have we invested?
About $267 million so far.
And then to get from that 99.5% capture rate to, if it's even possible, to get to metaphysical 100% capture, are there any estimates on what it would cost us to get to 100%?
With the projects that we're proposing through this bond, we will be getting close to 99.9% in that range. So yes, we're approximately there at 100. As I noted in the council presentation that we did last week, about 16% of the combined sewers still exist in the city of Mishawaka. They're in the older areas of the city. Some areas are difficult to get in and do the work. That's why they can be more expensive to do. But that 16% of combined sewers, those are areas that we're going to go in and do separation in.
So to get beyond what the impact would be of these projects that'll be funded through this bond, there still would be a significant expense associated with going beyond the $40 million that we're up to $40 million that we're being asked to approve this evening. Is that accurate?
It's possible, yeah. It's hard to predict at that point where we will be at. We're going to be doing some studies this summer. As we mentioned before, we have a model that we use to predict our sewer overflows and what these projects do when we complete them, how much CSO that removes. So we'll have a lot more information this summer also to share with council.
And then one of the other important points that I thought you shared with us is that this isn't just one project. It's a series of separate projects that almost span the entire length of the river. Not quite, but a significant portion of the length of the river throughout the city of Mishawaka. Can you touch on that, or am I right to think that that's accurate, that this isn't going to just be one site? It is multiple areas along the riverbank.
As we showed in the description of the project, some of the detailed summaries, yes, this is a number of different areas throughout the city.
And then that added benefit that Mr. Hazen referenced earlier is that, and I hadn't used this phrase, heard this phrase used in this context, but the Mishawaka way that you referenced is that while we're going to do this work, we're not just going to focus only on the sewer issues. We're going to also add those improvements that you highlighted for Mr. Hazen, so that the areas that are going to admittedly be inconvenienced by this will then have a benefit not only in terms of the sewer work, but streets, sidewalks, other things, correct?
Yes. As we go in and do this work for the CSOs, we also look at other things, infrastructure, as we're digging it up. Lead service lines is another thing that we're looking at, and currently looking at some grants to get in there and do some repair on those lead service lines as we do the sewer work. But as we leave these projects and we fill them back in, we want to make that area look nice also. So as Chris has told you and we've discussed at the past meeting, we go in and do past curb to curb. We go past, a little past sidewalk to sidewalk and make some pretty significant improvements with the sidewalks. In some cases, we add new lighting, but we want those residents who have been inconvenienced to see an improvement above ground also.
Thank you. Mr. Belovich.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm just curious, is there any village, town, or city in Indiana that's compliant? In northern Indiana that's on the St. Joe River?
It depends, I think, how you determine or how you define compliance. They are all in our same situation where they are having to meet long-term control plans and also spend, many hundreds of millions of dollars. Some of you heard of South Bend's plans in the news. Elkhart is in a similar situation. I believe we are ahead in many respects of these other cities, of what we have done in the past, and what we continue to do. I think our plan is better than some of these other facilities.
Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Brill? And thank you, sir. And beyond this issue this evening, I applaud the efforts of the administration and the mayor to continue to work with the federal government and, state compliance officials to really try to make sure that while we're attempting to be good stewards of the environment and the river, that we don't become further subject to some burdensome requirements that are fiscally almost impossible to meet. So thank you for the work that you're doing on that front as well.
Completely agree. Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Please come forward.
Hello, good evening. Chris Jamro, city engineer, and 100 Lincoln Way. What's our address? 100 Lincoln Way
West.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, it's been a long day. I wish to speak in favor. I'll keep this quite short and sweet because we have had...
And if I can be so rude and interrupt, I'm having a little trouble hearing you, so if you can try to move as close to the microphone as you can, that would be great. Thank you.
I would just like to keep this short and sweet. Tonight, I do want to speak in favor of the revenue bonds. This will allow the completion of comprehensive neighborhood improvements in the targeted long-term control areas and without raising wastewater rates. That's a win-win. And with all of the descriptions that have already been answered, I believe this is 100%, not just a little bit to the wastewater, because if we don't keep the wastewater up and running and doing his improvements, then what we do out in the system doesn't help us at all. So I think it's 100%.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Other questions for the city engineer? Mrs. Volker.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. I just had a quick question about the number of projects. I left my materials in the car.
Okay.
So I'm doing this from my photographic memory, and I'm thinking that there might be 5 different kind of main sites that we're going to be working on. Am I correct in that?
You're very close. We have Twin Branch. We have multiple sites within the Twin Branch area. We have the 3rd Street, the 3 phases of 3rd Street. We have West Street. We have Roosevelt. We have down off of Merrifield. So that's 5. Yeah.
So it's very comprehensive.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all your hard
I
work.
did mine off the top of my head too. Sorry.
I know. Thanks for your hard work on this, everybody's hard work on it.
Any other questions? Then thank you again for the information that you shared, and I'm sorry if I stole your thunder by asking certain questions to Mr. Breaux that I should have asked of you, but
No, you're perfectly fine. Thank you very much.
thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Please come forward. Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition? Please come forward. And is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak in opposition? Hearing none, are there any council members who wish to speak? Mrs. DeMaid.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have a question, and maybe Mr. Lynch can help. Do we know where the House bill is standing? Is it 1402 about the sewage?
Yes, I can speak to that. So it passed the Senate 48 to 0. It has, at this point, stalled in the House. It's not, the committee chair didn't agree to hear it, but we're looking at some other options. We do have live language, so I don't want to give away too much, but there's some opportunities for us to keep the bill alive as things come to an end in the session. So there's still hope. We did all we could we had strong representation by Senator Rogers in the Senate, and as it moved to the House, we had good sponsorship, but we have the chair of the Environmental Affairs Committee in the House didn't see it amenable to hear it in the House. But the language is still live, and there's going to be a conference committee, and there's, I think, a good likelihood that we'll see our language put into another bill.
Okay, great, very good, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I call for the question.
Question?
Madam Clerk, would you please poll the council?
Mr. Hazen?
Yes.
Mr. Belovich?
Yes.
Mr. Mamalenti?
Yes.
Mr. Bednicki?
Yes.
Mr. Emmons?
Yes.
Mrs. DeMaid?
Yes.
Mr. Compton?
Yes.
Mrs. Volker?
Yes.
Mr. Hicksonbaugh?
Yes.
Proposed ordinance passes 920.
Thank you. We will now move into privilege of the floor, and at this time, members of the public are invited to the podium to speak with respect to non-agenda items only under privilege of the floor.
Hi, I'm Isaac Prince. My address is 2301 Ridge Place, and I'm here to speak to you on behalf of the Youth Council. The Mishawaka Mayor's Youth Council is having a fundraiser right now. We're partnered with the Patronicity Campaign, development from the Indiana Housing for Community Development Authority, where how much money we raise, they will match it 100%. So if we raise $10, they'll match it and make it a $20 contribute to our park. We're creating a pocket park on the corner here of City Hall, First Street and Main Street. And I'm here to talk to you about raising funds for that and ask for donations. So our previous projects for these donations has been appointed by the mayor, our leadership projects. We have one every year. Last year, it was the community room upstairs where we're currently holding our meeting. But for the past Patronicity campaigns, we've had Heroes Park, where we won, after being nominated, a leadership thing from the state, where not only did we meet our goal, but we exceeded it by some. And then we submitted that to the state and won a prestigious award. So we're doing something similar where we're having this fundraiser and we're asking for the community to donate. Are there any questions about that?
Thank you. Any questions for Isaac? Mr. Mamalenti.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Prince. Is there a way to donate online?
Yes, there is. Right outside here, there's a poster for that'll tell you everything, like pretty much the elevator pitch for our pocket park. And there's also a QR code where it will take you straight to the Patronicity campaign, and you'll be able to donate through that, and it'll also have more information about what we plan to do with the park.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for that information. Thank you for the continued great work that you and your team do upstairs. Good luck.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Volker.
Thank you. Hi, Isaac. Thank you for coming today. Could you give us a very, very brief description of what the Pocket Park is what the plan is?
So we're going to have the 3D structure of the Mish, and it'll be right there on the thing. It's going to be LEDs in it. We're going to have, the eye will be replaced with just a blank space. That way you can go and stand as the eye and make a great selfie spot, bringing more people into the heart of Mishawaka is like how we like to call it. And we're planning to do something with that brick wall that's currently there, whether that be a mural or something else yet to be decided. We'll also put other amenities like trash cans, park benches, and also fun seating arrangement. For example, there's a tulip seat that we're currently looking at where it looks like a tulip and then you can fold down the seat. I think there's currently some in Heroes Park or Central Park, one of the parks currently in Mishawaka.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Emmons.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you want to make just a cash donation, who do we see?
Repeat that, please.
If we want to make a cash donation, not online, but just contribute, who do we see or where do we make that donation at?
Tell them to walk upstairs.
Yeah, we're right upstairs in the community room.
Well, but who do we see? I mean,
you can talk to Mrs. Wood here or the mayor's office, really. Would be a great
the
place.
mayor's office, we can make a contribution there.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for Isaac? Mr. Compton.
Young Mr. Prince, thank you very much for coming up here, and you did an excellent job for being a young man, coming up and talking to the council. I see a future director of economic development standing at the podium there. Heck, maybe sooner than later, I don't know. But very well done. Congratulations and good luck on your work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you again for sharing the information with us and for the work that you and the rest of the Youth Council are doing. Please pass that along to them as well. You know, certainly, I think this is a project that's worthy of support, not just by council members, but anyone else within the community who's so inclined. And before you leave this evening, I think I saw your dad reaching for his checkbook during the midst of your remarks since he was so proud. So make sure that he is the first donor to this project if he hasn't already. But thanks again for being here and for sharing the information.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak under privilege of the floor?
Christy Miller, 321 West 7th Street. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. I'm here tonight on behalf of the West End Neighborhood Watch to invite you all and all residents of Mishawaka to our next meeting. It will be the first Wednesday in May. That is Wednesday, May 3rd, 7 p.m. right here in City Hall. Look for our notices online as we confirm our conference room for that meeting. We have a very special meeting coming up for May. We have one of MPD's own and the president of the Fraternal Order of Police, Rich Freeman, who happens to be a physical tactics instructor and will be conducting an overview of self-defense. This is for all ages and all abilities. Come prepared to learn and have some fun. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak, please come forward.
Ronald D. Winter, 1013 Lincoln Way West. I'm here to talk about a couple of things that, as a lifelong resident of Mishawaka, you know, I think it's important that you hear these couple of things that I have in mind. One is the motorcycles, the noise. I've approached some of the council people in the past about it, and I've talked to the policemen, and I live on Lincoln Way. And if you live on Lincoln Way, you know what's happening with motorcycles, you know. And I'm not against motorcycles, but we have a noise ordinance in Mishawaka. And I was going to make a copy to give all of you so you could read it, but didn't get around to that. But we need to act on that. I mean, some citizen might come along, it might even be me, that sues the city. And I wouldn't want to do that, and I wouldn't want anybody else to do it. You guys have much more important things to do. So that's my first thing. So think about that. Talk to the police. There's a lot of easy ways that could be taken care of. You know, if nothing else, announcing to the motorcycle owners, hey, you're doing something illegal. We have laws against this. You're disturbing people. When I'm trying to go to sleep at 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night, right down Lincoln Way, as loud as you can imagine. So I don't want to take all your time up. The second thing is the school referendums. You know, I know it's not your job to deal with that, but you're the elected representatives of the city. And when their taxes goes up because of that school referendum, you need to take action. And there's other ways that we can handle this without one referendum after another. We're not a wealthy city, as you all know. We're a pretty middle-class city, and I respect the school system. I think they do a wonderful job. I would support them in every way. But there will be a sign in front of my house on Lincoln Way to vote no to this referendum. And I think that, I don't know a lot about it, but I do know that the school district is not part of the city of Mishawaka. It was voted and frozen as a district. Maybe some of you don't even know that. But that happened when Penn High School was built. I remember I was a freshman at Mishawaka in 1959, and we were free to a locker. And that school was a third of the size it is now. And when they built Penn, I think we lost probably a third of that class of mine to Penn. So maybe another way of going about it is to sit down with Penn or start the communication to, maybe we need one school district in this community. Maybe we need that. Maybe we can start a little communication with them to say, yeah, you know, and I don't want to hear from everybody that I talk to them about, oh, no, they'll never want to do that. Well, let's do the right thing for our children and our community and start that communication. The other thing is, let's deal with our legislative people about changing that frozen district. Maybe we can extend it to the true city limits of Mishawaka. Maybe that could balance it out. Maybe there's other things that we can do. But to keep doing referendums and raising the taxes on the citizens of Mishawaka is not the right way to go. So, for what it's worth and what I have to say about it, I think all of you should think about that and remember that you're representative of the community. The people that pay the taxes, they elected you. So it's important to you to act in one of those ways that I brought up. Okay, any questions to me?
Thank you, Ron, for your comments. I will tell you that in a neighborhood meeting that took place within the last week that Mrs. Volker was gracious enough to host, there was an indication to us from the police department that they and other city departments are revisiting our noise ordinance literally as we speak and taking a look to address some of these. So my hope would be, I haven't seen the finished product, but my hope would be the concern that you have, that I share, when I hear them up and down Mishawaka Avenue as they're
You can hear them too.
leaving an establishment in South Bend on their way elsewhere. It's an issue. So the police department's on it. They're working with our legal staff and code enforcement and others. So I'm confident that that issue is being looked at right now. Then with your second point, I understand your concern. You know, timing's everything in life, and this is, you know, as we've heard earlier this evening, unprecedented economic times. I wish that the state of Indiana shared the passion for education, public education, more to the point that you and I have, and that they would fully fund our school corporations so that these type of referenda weren't necessary. But you raised some valuable points, and I appreciate your comments with regard to all of that. Any other questions or comments for Mr. DeWinter? Mrs. Volker.
Thank you. Hi, Mr. DeWinter. How are you?
Thanks.
I wanted to let you know, and I don't know if you'd be interested in attending, but there are actually 2 informational meetings this week about the school referendum project.
Yes, I'll be there.
Okay, so one tomorrow night and one Wednesday night. Both, Wednesday night is here, tomorrow night is at the library, 6 p.m.
Anything else?
Mr. Compton.
Yeah, Mr. DeWinter, thank you again, and I certainly understand a person not wanting to see their taxes go up, you know,
It has.
enough kind of thing. But I also, you said something that you don't know a lot of, and maybe I misunderstood you. You don't know a lot about this referendum. I ask you to look into it and study it and try to understand it, but go deeper. Why are we doing referendums in Indiana that we weren't doing 10 years ago?
Well, I can say a couple things about it. I know just what I've picked up through the news is I think there's 3 school districts that are in the same kind of situation we are. You know, basically, we lost our factories. But, you know, with Mr. Prince's work with the motels, I can see the tax base is going to come back a bit, which will be very helpful. But, you know, losing all those factories that employed all Mishawaka people, we're a working-class city. That's really what threw the whole thing in a mess.
I ask you to look even a little deeper and go back and study what has been done in Indianapolis that has brought us to this point, that, and has put us in a situation where we have to do this. I ask you to do that. And so it runs a little deeper than just Mishawaka, and we're kind of stuck with the consequences. Now, it was done with, I think, good intentions in mind, putting it in front of the citizens to vote on these things and give them more say-so in where their tax dollars go. But it gets a little deeper and a little murkier than that, and I just ask you to look at it before you mark a no on there right away. But I certainly understand. I understand people, and you're right on. We're a very blue-collar, middle-class to lower middle-class city. And how much can you ask people to burden? I get that. But I do ask you to kind of look at it from all sides and then make your decision.
Well, I've always heard that it's the legislative that holds it back, that they won't change that district that was frozen. That's the only thing I know about it.
Even runs deeper than that, but.
Yeah, I will
that's
look into
another
it more.
discussion, and- Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak under privilege of the floor?
I'm Brett McNeil, 2121 Wynn Place. Going to take a couple minutes. The police department's investigation of itself over the Joe Wood stop is now complete. The meager findings are not terribly surprising, but do leave many unanswered questions. This internal probe produced no written report, no methodology, no recommendations, no substance, not much substance at all. So tonight, I'd like to put a couple things on the record about what happened here and why the announced findings are so incomplete. For me, in my opinion, the real issue is not the Joe Wood stop. That was bad. The internal response has been worse. Mishawaka police last fall cut Joe Wood a big break, what his dad calls a, quote, hometown approach to DUI enforcement. Maybe that happens for others, I don't know. But no police reports were made of the stop. Call logs were reportedly altered. In other words, there may have been a cover. A 20-year veteran complained about it to the chief. This officer was run out of the department. In a TV interview, he implicated the chief in a campaign of retaliation. The Joe Wood scandal was known inside the MPD for 5 months. No investigation was launched until embarrassing stories, appeared in the news. In order to avoid those embarrassing stories, the city tried to block release of body camera footage. The department's subsequent investigation was opaque and appears to have avoided weightier issues of leadership, oversight, and department culture. It's my understanding members of the city council received no updates about the probe, certainly not from the chief or the mayor. The public was ignored. The police captain at the center of the scandal demoted himself to lieutenant. The chief announced this highly unusual move at a hearing last week that violated the state's open meetings laws. No agenda was posted. Both the chief and mayor were present at that meeting. The department closed its investigation via press release. Honestly, I hope no one in this room is comfortable with all this. Rank and file cops in Mishawaka deserve good leadership. So do the people of Mishawaka. The whole episode is a real black eye for the city. I think everybody here knows that. I'm asking you members of the city council to do something about it. Sitting here, I changed my comments. I think honestly that starts with a new chief. I don't know what you can do about that. I would suggest that a no confidence vote is something I would be talking about. If you're thinking about a new chief, I would also look outside the city for candidates, at least interview them. I don't think I have a whole lot more to say. This is the second time I've appeared before you to talk about this. I don't want to keep talking about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McNeil. In both times you've appeared in front of us, your comments have been very appropriate, and I appreciate that. With regard to the last point that you made concerning personnel within the police department, I think it's important for the public to understand that the role of this council is to be the legislative body and the fiscal body for the city. We really have no day-to-day control over the police department. That flows up through the administration up to the Board of Public Works and Safety. So in terms of who the police chief is, we don't have the ability to be able to hire nor to make any other, and I'm just making some comments, sir, I appreciate, you've had your chance to speak, so I'm making my comments. To clarify, no.
You have a big voice, is all. You have an outside voice.
I understand, but I'm not asking to engage in a debate. I'm just stating my point of view as well. So that's the reality of the role that we as a group play. And it's not to say that I disagree with the concerns that you're raising, but I want to make sure that everybody's on the same page with regard to our role in the process. I would also say that not having been involved in the investigation, I can't speak to the details just, as you indicated. But I will go on record as saying to this point in time, I haven't been made aware of one fact that leads me to believe that the officers involved in the matter of the stop, directly involved, that they did anything wrong. I just haven't heard anything but made aware of anything that leads me to believe that those officers committed any inappropriate act. I'm also happy to go on record and say that I haven't been made aware of one fact that leads me to believe that Mayor Wood inappropriately interceded in this matter. My understanding has been, based upon what's publicly reported, is that he first found out about this when he was woke up as a father in the middle of the night. And I have not heard one fact to the contrary of that. Are there other facts out there? You and I would only know if we were involved in the investigation or we had some more detail. But I'm happy to say that based upon what I know to this point in time, those are the facts as I understand that. If other facts come to light, then we'll all have to take those into account and adjust our conclusions. But those are the facts that as I understand them at this point in time. I do think that prompt communication is always important, and to try to be as transparent as you can within the confines of confidentiality and employment-related matters. That's what I do for a living, so there's always a tension between what you want to share at times and what you can share. But I do believe that there are some lessons to be learned here, and my hope would be that to the extent that there are any procedural or policy issues that need to be adjusted within the police department, and at this point, I haven't heard of any, but if there are, that my hope would be that those will take place and be adjusted in the near future, so that moving forward, there won't be these type of concerns that will continue to linger in the minds of the public. But thank you for your comments. Any other comments from the council? Mr. Compton.
The only thing I would add to that is during the investigation, I don't think it's appropriate for the investigators to keep the council clued in on what's going on. But when it was over, we had the opportunity to talk to them and ask specific, poignant questions. And that did take place. So we are concerned. We share some of your concern. And we hope we learn from this going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on the privilege of the floor? Then is there anyone participating remotely who wishes to speak under privilege of the floor? Hearing none, we'll move into unfinished business, of which there is none. New business. Is there any new business to come before the council? Mr. Owens.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a notice that the West End Neighborhood Meeting will meet this coming Thursday at St. Babel's but the meeting won't be at St. Babel's. We're asking everybody that has signed up for the tour of the JJC, meet at the St. Babel's parking lot at 6 to 6:15. The bus will leave St. Babel's at 6:30 to go over to the JJC for a tour. And when the tour is over, we'll board the bus and we'll come back to St. Babel's. So that way, not everybody has to drive or get lost going over, that everybody will be there at the same time. So if you're interested in joining us to make that tour at the JJC, be at St. Babel's between 6 and 6:15, because the bus will leave at 6:30, whether you're there or not. So just wanted to let you know. And again, usually we have refreshments from West End Bakery, but the chef at JJC is going to make the refreshments for us that evening. So we look forward to doing it. So if there are any council members or anybody in the audience that would like to go, like I say, please be there between 6 and 6:15. That's this Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Emmons. Any other new business to come before the council? I like it. Then hearing none, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
We're adjourned. Thank you, folks.